So my name's Kean Walmsley. Thanks to Jonas and to Max for inviting me along to this. So I work in Autodesk Research. In fact, I am Autodesk Research Switzerland. It's me. So I'm based in Neuchâtel. I work for a team actually out of Toronto. Autodesk Research is largely based there. My main focus is on the Internet of Things, but I also dabble in VR and AR. If you can see me on Twitter, Kean W. You can visit my blog there. You'll see that a lot of the research that I'm doing at the moment relates to Microsoft HoloLens. But you know, the project I'm going to talk to you about today relates to web VR and how I think it can be used for collaborative design reviews. So I said, you know, it's about getting lost in space. Some of you may remember the classic TV show, Lost in Space. I looked for some good imagery from that. Couldn't really find anything that I could use, so decided to put something from Gravity, because, you know, our software was used for that and virtually every other Hollywood movie that you can think of. I assume people have mostly heard of Autodesk. I don't have to introduce the company too much. We have a lot of software anyway. And you can get it for free if you're a student, so I'll talk about that later. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different from the other classes in the sense it's going to be a kind of participatory. You're going to engage in an experiment. So if you want to be part of this, you need a few things. On your mobile phone, you're going to need some sort of internet access, like I have now as well. You're going to need... It may work with Safari, but typically it's better to do it with Chrome, if you have Chrome installed. And you're going to need, well, again, it's not really a requirement, but it would help if you've got a QR code reader. The good news is, because we're in Switzerland, everybody has one, because you've all got the SBB app installed, right? Everybody, I'm sure. Anyway, if you don't, it's worth installing. And believe it or not, some of you may not realize, but there is a QR code reader in the menu of the SBB app at the bottom. So you've already got that on your phones, almost certainly. We've also got some Google Cardboards that Jonas is going to distribute. So we've only got about 30, so I managed to bring 20, and thanks to Google, I guess, for bringing another 10. And so it's not everybody that's going to have one, and you don't really need one to see the experiment. But so maybe we can find a way to share them and get it working. Okay, a little bit of background to Autodesk and VR. So back in the early 90s, we had something called the Cyberspace Developers Kit, right? So this was creating the sort of experience that Kim was talking about in the last speech. So it was, you know, $2,500, and it was running on an IBM, you know, IBM PC, a 386. You probably got about, I think we got up to about 4 frames per second, all right? And that was with really big polygons, as you're saying, right? So it was pretty unimpressive in a sense. And then we kind of, you know, got out of VR for a while. I think you could say that. And I think it's kind of instructive to understand why. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, but this is something that in the technology industry we find extremely useful to sort of track a technology's progress through hype and how interested and excited people are about it, but also how viable it is. So this is what it looked like back in 1995. There weren't that many bits of technology there. You can also see that for some reason splines, nobody could draw splines back in 1995. It's pretty horrific. But virtual reality had already, you know, by the time we got out of it, which is around then, more or less when I joined, it was already, you know, it'd gone over the peak of inflated expectations and it was going into the trough of disillusionment. But fast forward 21 years to where we are today, and we can see that it's, you know, not only have we got a lot of other cool technology kind of on the left-hand side of the graph, but finally virtual reality is coming out onto the plateau of productivity. It's probably another 5 to 10 years before it's really, really viable, okay? At least according to Gartner. So we started to get excited again with VR, of course, with the 2012 Kickstarter campaign for Oculus. This is only when I started to kind of get interested again, but the real moment that got me excited was when this came out. So when Google Cardboard was announced in 2014 at Google I/O, and that for me was really the moment where I started to spend a lot more time thinking about virtual reality, because it's that sort of democratizing effect of having something that anybody can just pick up and use that was really, really powerful for me. So then the Gear VR came out as well, of course, and I had fun sort of playing with that too. And you know, since then I've kind of been playing around with virtually any sort of VR headset you can get. I haven't yet got a Daydream, but I'm super excited about the promise of it, and I'm really interested to see where this sort of experience we have with mobile VR is going to take us. So on to my experiments. Now, it kind of started when originally, and I think this was back in late 2014, in the Grey Area Theatre on Mission Street in San Francisco, there was a VR hackathon that I went along to, and I developed this as a kind of a proof of concept, where essentially it's a web page, and I'll just launch it if the demo gods are smiling on me again. And this is all it is. It's actually instancing two of our web-based viewers inside a single web page. What it does when you load it on your phone is, as the phone tilts, it just looks at the device orientation, which is an HTML5 event, and it manually adjusts both of the viewers so that it maintains a stereoscopic effect. So very, very kind of, well, I don't know what to say. It's fairly sort of, it's not very sophisticated in terms of a solution. Essentially, you know, what I'll do is I'll move them here. It does maintain it just with the mouse click as well. But what I also did was make sure that, and this is kind of a problem with VR when you're looking at an object, what I didn't want to do is have it so you're looking around and the object is in the corner of the room, because that's, you know, that's not a very good experience. So essentially what I did was really only look at the roll and the pitch, I think that's right, or I forget which ones it is. Anyway, I discarded one of them, but really, so as you turn around like that, the object rotates on a turntable, so it's like you're looking around it. And then as you go like that, you're looking over it or looking under it. And it's actually very effective. And what I found about it as well, and this was kind of an aha moment for me, was like breaking the reality of it also stopped feelings of nausea and things like that, because the brain isn't trying to reconcile that with reality. So while it may sound a little strange, as soon as you try it, it becomes natural straight away, and it doesn't make you sick. Perfect. So that was the initial kind of prototype. But one of the things that I found with that is that, you know, you couldn't do very much with it. There wasn't really a good way to do things like explode the model, or, you know, zoom in or zoom out or control it. It was very difficult to do that. So what I ended up doing for the next iteration of the prototype, and we'll see how this works. Okay. Oh no, it's not showing it. Oh well, anyway, I can hear it. That doesn't really help. Wonderful. Why is that happening? Is there a trick? And the volume's not going to help. There's actually a video that goes with it, but it really, it doesn't matter. Essentially, what I added was voice commands so that you could see. You could say explode, and then the object would explode. You could say look at the front, look at the back, look at the left, and based on that, things would happen. And it was just using the Google Chrome JavaScript speech recognition API, but it was a relatively effective way for a single user to make manipulations to what they're seeing. So that worked well. The next kind of iteration, and that's where we're going to look at now with you guys, is actually it's a more collaborative or curated VR, if you like. So rather than trying to control the experience yourself, there's a third party who is managing the experience for you. So it could be a teacher, an architect, or a doctor. So they're leading a group through a virtual experience. And this is very similar to what we saw with Google Expeditions. You know, and in fact, the initial prototype for this we did at a hackathon the week before Google Expeditions was announced. So clearly it was nice, there was some amount of synchronicity there. But we think that and I definitely sort of agrees with other speeches that we've seen today, is that there is an opportunity to make it more social. I mean, we think that from our perspective, it brings a lot more value to VR than the isolated experience that we have today. And whether it's having architects do walkthroughs of buildings, or whether on a building site you do site fly-throughs, this stuff is really interesting to our customers. So at the hackathon in San Francisco, there was a team of 3 of us flew across from Europe. Interestingly, we couldn't get anybody from Autodesk in San Francisco to attend, but it was a Memorial Day weekend, so, you know. So there's me from Neuchâtel and a couple of colleagues from Potsdam, all flew in for the event. And we called our project, initially we called it VR Party, which was, you know, just a kind of a placeholder name. But then the week after, I'd sort of, you know, thought about branding a little bit more, and we came up with VROC It. So VROC is virtual reality online collaboration, kind of maybe. But it's also like Grok, you know, Grok and VROC. And so I registered the domain, the Italian domain name, vroc.it. And you can go along to that site, and that's kind of the site we're going to see now. Oh, by the way, half of you are not going to make this work, are not going to get it to work. So there's now I've never understood why, and sometimes it's about versions of iOS not working, sometimes it's about Chrome not being installed, but fairly consistently it's about 50-50 whether it's going to work or not. I just want to set the expectation out right up front, so if you're disappointed, the chances are the person to your left or to your right has got it working, so just have a look at their phone. All right. So vroc.it, VROC-it, let's put this for full screen. And I should also actually change the zoom factor so that it's a bit bigger, so you can actually scan that QR code, hopefully. So there's a QR code there that you can already scan if you're lucky to get into the session. If it doesn't work, there is kind of a URL that I put in text above, so you can either try and type that in to try to get in. What I will do is launch this. Hang on, give me a second. I'll go back and get this in a separate window. A second. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to display both at the same time. We'll give it a go. Try and get both at the same time. So you can actually see what you see on the, what you should see on the phone is what is flashing down here in the bottom right. Okay, so you should see this waiting thing. And then when I click on essentially click on one of these models on the left, it's going to get loaded into the stereoscopic view. Okay, that's what you should see. And then you can start to sort of move your head around and experience what it is, you know, looking up, looking down. So that's kind of cool. We can do things like go in here and say, well, what's it look like if you explode the model? And so the things that I do here are being captured and kind of sent out to everybody who's connected into the session. So in case you can't see that, I zoom out a little bit. Is it kind of working for people, more or less? Yes, no, I see a few. Okay, so there's a few people it's working for. So we can do things like select pieces of geometry and say, okay, well, let's all focus on the base of this robot because that's really interesting for some reason. I mean, it isn't, but you know, it could be. And then all of a sudden, you should just see the base of the robot, and it should just work. So that's kind of, you know, the basic app. What I can also do is then go ahead and, so I kind of like this example. As we're in Switzerland, you know, it's always nice to have a watchmaking example, especially where I live in Neuchâtel, you know, in Watch Valley. So this is, you know, a movement by a Swiss company. One thing that's important to note, as I'm sure you've all realized by now, is that I'm sending you the information to load the models and everything's kind of happening on your own devices, but I'm not telling you where to look. I may change the zoom factor, but I'm definitely not changing your camera target or anything like that. Oh, nice. I like the guy with the purple thing on. Right on. Are you connecting into this? Or okay, good. All right, perfect. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we can, it's with our sort of viewing tech, we have all the information about what's inside the model as well. We can sort of go in and look at individual components or sub-assemblies, so isolate them that way. It's just kind of our standard web-based viewer. And one of the good things is it kind of enables all this content that Autodesk software creates. All of this stuff can be viewed, well, with exceptions. The bigger the model, the slower it'll be in terms of the reactiveness. But it mostly works pretty well. And then I have a bunch of examples there that you can check out in your own time. Okay? Can I just have a quick show of hands? Who managed to get it working? All right, 50% of you, pretty much on the nail. I always expected to get better over time, but it just kind of stays at 50%. But I mean, it's kind of research, right? So it doesn't matter. Okay, so definitely performance around web-based mobile VR is getting better. Web VR itself is a big push now, and I'm super bullish about where it's going to take us. With just on the mobile side, Gear VR is clearly a big focus for Samsung and Oculus, Daydream VR for Google. So I think for me, the future looks very bright in terms of what's coming down the line and where things are going from a mobile and even web-based perspective. Mostly the response to the prototype has been positive. So we have a lot of people inside Autodesk who are on the film and game technology kind of thing, and they always go, frame rates and, polygons. But I mean, for our customers who are used to really crappy renderings a lot of the time, they put it on and they're like, wow, this is cool. I think the response has been encouraging, and I'm what I've managed to convince our viewer team to do is to sort of natively support VR, so you don't have to have this silly 2 viewers in a web page thing. We're doing stereoscopic, viewports and stuff. So that I think has been a good benefit of doing this prototype. And also I think for those of you that are interested in sort of investing in this space, there's actually quite a lot of money in design visualization, and the bar is really low in terms of what you need to do to keep people happy. I think for me personally, the sort of mobile web-based story in terms of VR is quite a good one for this particular space. If you want to take this further in any way, you can try Vrocket yourselves at home with your own models. You can upload your own models and give it a try. Pretty much any of about 50 or 60 design formats are supported by the technology, so you can try it out. And then you can clone the repo on GitHub if you're programmers and you want to dig into it a bit. Everything is published there as well. And send me feedback, whether via Twitter or by email. I'd be very happy to hear from you. And I think, oh yes, and I did say I'd mention this. In case any of you are students or educators, all our software is free for students and educators around the world now, so you can go and find out more about that. This is not a plug. In case people don't know, I thought I'd mention it. All right. Okay, thank you very much.